Welcome to the Lifestyle CEO, a community designed for women looking to take their life into their own hands and redefine what success looks like for them.
I'm Katie, a clinical psychologist and couples therapist. I'm passionate about connecting you with the tools you need to create the life and relationship you want.
And I'm Christina, a marketing and business expert who has built her life around giving herself and those around her the ability to choose what their lifestyle looks like for them.
Together, we have created the podcast for women just like us who are looking to redefine what success looks like for them and enjoy a lifestyle that they love.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
I'm kind of laughing because this is the first time we've done a podcast where we're not in the same place. And there was just like a little countdown on the screen.
I know. I feel a bit sad we're not together.
Yeah, it feels strange. It feels very strange. But it's so lovely to see you online anyway.
I know. And we're literally in opposite sides of the world, which is crazy.
We are. So I'm on the
amazing.
Mornington Peninsula in Australia and you're joining us from...
From the Midlands in England.
Yeah.
is
So we're also
lovely.
in different seasons, aren't we?
We are. And I'm actually starting to really miss Bali weather at the moment. It's very cold here, but we were very lucky in that we got snow, which is obviously delightful. So yeah, I feel like I ticked off all the kids' wants for the Christmas holiday, and now it's time to get back to Bali. But yeah, it's just a strange time, I think. I think mainly for expats as well, because a lot of people tend to return home to their home country. This is the first year we've come back since moving to Bali, and it has been incredible. We've been here for nearly 2 months now, I guess. It's just all a bit bizarre. But it's interesting because I think obviously we're so out of our routine, but that sort of Christmas period, New Year period often comes with this sort of sense of need to get myself, new year, new me sort of stuff, and just goal setting, and everyone's talking about it on Instagram and on, everyone sort of just loves this whole, setting your goals and stuff like that, which obviously I love buying into as well. But it's been really interesting this year, I think, probably because we're a bit out of our routine, but also I think it just was so much more apparent to me that this pressure we put on our January goals and having everything figured out by the 1st of January to enter the new year ready to accomplish is just such a crazy amount of pressure we put on ourselves.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I have a confession to make to you. Because we did jump on a call probably a week ago, I think, and we talked about topics, and we did talk about maybe setting our New Year's goals before we did this podcast. But I'm in the Southern Hemisphere, so down here in Australia, it's still summer holiday, so it's still that time of year where kids are at home. It's a little bit more chaotic, a little bit busy, and it's really hard to carve out that time. And I could have done it. I actually was like, I'm going to set my alarm and wake up this morning and, get to it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that because actually that's not how I like to do goal planning. I like to take my time. I like to have a really nice day and just spend some time really kind of thinking about
Yeah.
what it is that I want for the year, how I want the year to feel. So yeah, full disclosure. Sorry, Christina.
done
I
yet.
have not done my homework, but I'm sure that listeners out there are feeling the same, where people aren't in their routine yet and they're just not ready to set their goals for
Yeah.
2025.
And I think that's kind of it, right? I think the period between Christmas and New Year, which I like to refer to as Twixmas, I was kind of feeling a bit of resentment towards using that time to start planning for the next year. It's almost like you're wishing away this beautiful period in the year where
Yes.
everyone is off work, you've got your kids, you can take that pressure off because everyone's on holiday. It's not just you and you're going to come back to a pile of emails. It's such a special period of the year. And I felt like actually using that, and I'm a bit like you, I need a good couple of days to sort of reflect and write loads of notes, and then eventually it gets drilled down into my kind of 3 key areas of focus or whatever. And yeah, I was a bit the same. I mean, I have done mine eventually, but it honestly has taken a good 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm still distilling it down. But there's a beauty in that as well, and I think that's the kind of that's the point. All these people who do like goal setting parties or, set your goals with me in 1 hour. I just don't think that's the point of it really. And I just don't think it gives us enough time to really enjoy the process of reflecting on what we've achieved in 2024 and really looking ahead at what do we want to achieve in the year ahead.
Absolutely agree. And I think that idea of really reflection takes time, doesn't it? Like it
Mm,
takes time just to kind of think about how we felt over the past year, what we have achieved, what we do differently, what we want to get out of next year. And I think that that really is the key is kind of and enjoying the process. Like it
mm.
shouldn't be another thing on our to-do
On our
list that we
to-do
have to cut
list.
it to tick off. It
Exactly.
should more be something that we're looking forward to, excited
Mm.
about. And yeah, I am really looking forward to doing mine actually. I'm
Yeah,
very
and it is a
excited.
beautiful thing, and like I think like you really need a time where you're on your own, like a whole day basically, and you have to be
Mhm.
in the right mood, and you kind of have to have nothing else in your brain that you're thinking about. Like it really needs that space, and we talk about this a lot. We're carving out time just to think and reflect and really just get deep into those thoughts. It's quite hard
Mhm.
to come across times like that, especially if the
Mm,
kids are off school and you've got loads of other stuff
yes.
going on. So it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely. So tell me about yours. I'm really intrigued. And
okay.
and
So
firstly, actually, can you tell me about your process? Because
mm,
I'm probably gonna copy yours a little bit.
yeah.
No, I do have my own process, but
No,
you
no, I
are
think
one of those people that are highly organized. You have great structures and great systems, which I highly respect. And
um,
so I'm really keen to learn about your process for setting your New Year's goals. And I'm sure I will take something away from that.
yeah, okay. So I mean a big part of it is that reflection piece. And I think it's really important to take, like we've just said, take a lot of time to reflect. And like I even looked through all of my camera roll and just looked at stuff that had happened across the year because I think it's really easy to also forget
Mm.
what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is like celebrating things, and just really celebrating big, small wins, whatever. Because I think I mean, I definitely have a habit of thinking like, oh, well, I didn't really achieve anything last year because I stayed quite, I didn't really move the needle in in any kind of massive way. But actually, when I looked through my camera roll, I was like, God, we had some incredible experiences and we spent so much time as a family or with the children and just experiencing amazing things, like spending so much time with my parents, my sister, all of that sort of stuff. And that is an achievement in itself, right? So it's just sort of reflecting and really kind of admiring everything that's happened in the last year, while also obviously looking at areas where perhaps you haven't achieved what you wanted to. If you had set out 2024 goals, looking back at them and seeing, what worked, what didn't, maybe what just doesn't even feel aligned anymore that you didn't,
Mm.
you maybe don't want to focus on. So that's a really nice part. And I tend to journal quite a lot around that and just write notes and all of that stuff. And then we have like a wheel of life. So you have 8 sections of your wheel of life where you can kind of choose between like finances, business, personal relationships, adventure, money, like the important areas of your life. And you can score yourself between 1 and 10 of how you feel like you're doing in there. Um, and this is why it's important to do it on a good day, I think, because if you're having a bad day, like I looked back at mine today and I was like, wow, I must have been having a really bad time that day because I scored myself so low. And I was like, okay, it's not that bad, Christina. So I've kind of reversed that a bit. So yeah, and then I guess the next part is I think it's important to not overburden yourself with goals. So
Mhm.
choosing maybe 3 areas of your life that you really want to focus on. So for me, mine's kind of like business, finances, and what was my other one? Oh, like fitness. So I kind of, um, yeah, it's kind of, I think how did I put it? Family, fitness, and finances, because business and finances are kind of the same thing. So I have my 3
Uh-huh.
Fs basically. Um, and then this seems like such a long process. I actually do have a workbook that I can share with you. Can do this
That would
through.
be great. Maybe we
Um,
could share that with the audience too, and I
yeah,
can
and if
add
any, yeah,
some
we can put
after
it
I've
as a
done mine.
download.
Yeah.
Um, and then within those 3 areas, it's then breaking that down, and I do it by quarter basically. So like, what do I want to achieve in quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and then you can break it down by month. So by the end, I do like an A3 sheet for like January.
Mhm.
What's the key things I want to achieve, and it just makes it feel so much more manageable because you can just stick January up on your wall, and you can say, right, actually, that's not that hard, because sometimes goals can feel so massive or so far away that you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll deal with that later. But actually, if you have sort of it broken down monthly, then it feels much more manageable, and you kind of push yourself to keep moving on it each month, And that
I
is the
love that.
process.
It's so structured. We are so different, and I love that about us and our friendship. Because you know me, I'm gonna start with the feelings, like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
mind map and think about how do I
which
want
I
this year
love
to
as well.
feel? How did last year feel for me? And then kind of how do I get there? When you were talking, there was a few things that I wanted to ask you about because I think this is really quite insightful. When you're talking about those areas, I noticed that you didn't try and choose goals for each area. And I'm
Mm.
wondering, part of it sort of felt like that you had decided that you're actually doing well in some of those areas, so you didn't really need to change anything. And I think
Mm.
sometimes we can almost set ourselves too many goals. And part of that is that we're actually setting goals around things that we're already doing well and we don't need to
Mm.
change. So, is part of that process a little bit for you looking at some of those areas that are just working and there's nothing that you need to shift in those?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, a lot about goals is actually getting into a habit of something that then becomes part of your
Mhm.
lifestyle. And I think when I'm setting goals specifically, it tends to be around areas that I maybe haven't made a habitual part of my life yet, because that's really the only way to achieve a goal. You don't ever really get to a point, well, sometimes you do, but it depends what the goal is. But like in general, it tends to be a goal around creating a habit that's going to
Mhm.
push you towards that goal, right? So, for
Yeah,
example,
absolutely.
friends, family, I put a lot of effort into that over the last couple of years, and I really feel like that's in a really good place. And it's not that I'm not going to pay attention to my friends and family. It just feels like I don't need to necessarily set myself a goal around building a community in Bali, or, building a better relationship with my sister, whatever
Mhm.
it may be.
Mhm.
I feel like that's kind of in a really good place. So yeah, like you say, it doesn't necessarily need a focus because it's kind of part of my life now already. Whereas like finances, I really want to get into like good levels of investing this year. And that is certainly not a habit yet. So that's something that I really want to, you know, research, set goals around how I'm going to learn about that, and, blah, blah, blah. So I think that, yeah, that's what it is. It's sort of looking at areas of your life where you've got something that you haven't quite achieved yet.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that because you are recognizing it's really you have created those great habits in so many
Mm,
areas of your life. And so, of course, you want to maintain them, but it's not something you're striving towards or something that you need
yeah,
to create that routine around and
exactly.
maintain that routine, like
Mm,
going to the gym.
yes. Well, that's something
Which
that has been on my goal board for about 18 years. I still have it in
I
there every year.
I know, but I feel like in Bali, we were in such a good
We
routine,
were.
weren't we?
We
Like, I
were.
feel like we were very consistent with going to the gym, and then both of us have come back to, life, real
Man,
life, and
honestly.
you're finding, like, your new groove with that, and you're finding your new way how to carve out that time, how to maintain that commitment, and I think that's been interesting for me because it's not about a lack of motivation or wanting to do it, it's just been finding out how to do it in this new way of living my
Yeah.
life. So that is a new habit that needs to be
Mm,
created
yeah.
around, what does that look like now and where do I put that in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is
Yeah.
about adjusting and it is about creating new habits even
Mm.
where there have been habits in the past.
For sure. And I think that's been I'm really excited to go back to Bali because I feel like I've learned so much about myself just coming back to England. And it's definitely like, I think I took for granted how much time I had in Bali. And it might be because I work in the nighttime. So actually my days are just longer because I have all day and then most of the night. So, I just do naturally have 12 more hours in the day. But it's like here, and I guess this kind of comes on to a topic that we're really passionate about. It's like when you're working a 9 to 5 job, let's say, and obviously there's so much at the moment about this kind of topic, but obviously just living with it or seeing people in England and seeing kind of how they live, it's literally like you leave for work at 7:30, 8 in the morning. You're dropping your kids to school, you're getting your kids ready for school, let's say in the morning. You get home from work at 6 o'clock, you have to get your kids dinner, get them into bed. And then it's like by the time you finish that, like really, who would want to go to the gym after that? It's exhausting. And obviously not everyone has children, but you really do have to add hours either right at the beginning of the day, so like 5 a.m., 4:30, whatever, or at the end of the day when really you want to be relaxing. And it is finding a habit, and obviously people do it. But I think for me, I've just realized that I'm definitely not a morning person, especially when it's not dark and rainy outside. And I'm definitely not an evening person when it's dark and rainy outside. Like, I don't want to be leaving the house.
Are you an anything person when it's dark and rainy outside?
No, and it's freezing. Like, I just cannot deal
Yeah.
with it. I mean, I'm sure, like anything, if you force yourself and you put yourself in the habit, but God, I feel like very proud of people that do that because that is not me. But I think it's once you get a routine wherever you are, you do tend to just run with it, and you get, if you make it a habit, you're disciplined with it, it tends to become easier and easier. But I guess when you're living a bit more of a fluid, is that the right word? Fluid lifestyle. I'm just sort of not committing to a routine here because I know I'm going to be leaving in a couple of weeks, So, but yeah, it is tricky, but I think that is the key thing with goals. And that's why breaking it down into like monthly mini achievements you want to do towards those goals is really helpful because that's where you're building those habits,
Mm.
So,
Actually, speaking on that, I haven't done my goals, but what one of my goals is probably to be a little bit more organized. And I have done a lot of organization. So I found that here I can't do things at the same time. So it's just not going to work when the kids go back to school and their schedules and that sort of thing. So it will be for me, it's going to be different times, different days. So I really need to schedule it out because it's much easier, I think, when it was to like, I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. and go to the gym every morning
yeah,
in Bali versus here. Sometimes it's going to be 6 a.m. Sometimes it's going to be the middle of the day. Sometimes it's going to
yeah,
be the end of the day. And so I have found it's a little bit harder to create habits when your life isn't as structured, which is kind of similar to Bali in some ways. So I have to really be more organized and
yeah,
really, put it in the
map out.
calendar and map it out and figure it out and get very micro organized, which
Yeah,
is not really my personality
no,
type. So I'm more you at the moment. I've gone the other way. I've like really mapped out
proud.
like the micro
You have a
things.
color-coded calendar?
I do. It is extremely color coded,
Oh
and
my
there is a
God, I love
kids
it.
calendar, and then there is like my work calendar.
Nice,
So,
nice.
and even the kids, they have colors,
Oh, I
and
love
who's
that.
responsible for the past colors, because it is a juggle. It is trying to maintain your own needs in that is really, really hard. And I
Yeah.
find if it's not in there, it's just not going to happen because there's always
Yeah.
something that could take priority over
Mm.
something else that's important to you.
And I think that's actually a really good point about actually when you're doing your goals, think about stuff like that. Like maybe one of the goals is making sure you have enough time for yourself as well, and how do you map that into your life? And
Yes.
and it is getting as granular as that because like you say, it's quite hard to actually like even with goals which feel like so for example with the business for me a lot of my goals require me to work on the business rather than in it. But naturally, every day is taken up with like client work or, things that are in the business rather than on it. And the on the business just gets sort of pushed to the side. So it's kind of like, right, one of my January goals is to schedule time into my diary to actually have time to work on those key things on the business, basically. Because it is hard.
I feel like if you look at my calendar, you would be so proud of me because I have so many planning kind of
Oh,
sections, which
yes.
is something
Amazing.
also I've never done before. I agree. Like there's so much the doing kind of stuff that I
Mm,
schedule all that out, but I never schedule out the planning time.
mm,
And then you don't get to it, right? So
yeah.
this year I've absolutely Oh my gosh, I'm just thinking now. My calendar is, I think this is the most organized I've ever been in my
Oh my
life.
God, I'm so proud.
But it's, there's very much like planning times. I've kind of got different days for different things. But I think for me too, like I really want to make sure that I'm focusing on the planning, not just the doing. So I think it's so important that you carve out that time because it
Yeah.
always is the thing that drops down the priority list, isn't it?
And do you know what I find as well? I find that actually by knowing it's all scheduled, it means I'm able to be more present in everything else I'm doing. So like for if it's, spending time with the children or having family time or whatever, normally that would really I'd have my brain would be all over the place thinking about everything else that I need to do. But now it feels a bit more like, well, I know that there's allotted time to do that, so I can be fully present in whatever it is I'm doing at the moment. And I think it's quite freeing in a way, although it takes some time to maybe map it out and plan it out, and it feels a bit over the top. But actually, in
You
terms
did.
of taking that mental load out of your brain now, and it's done, and you're like, okay, well, like someone's running my life basically because I know what I've got to do every minute of every. Maybe not that
Hopefully,
bad,
I've
but
got some freedom in there.
yeah,
But
schedule free
no.
time.
Well, I do actually have that too. Oh my gosh. Who am I?
Oh, I really want
Um,
to learn. I want to see what your goals are when we. But to
yes.
come back to the whole point of that, it's like I was thinking January or December is not a good time to plan goals, I've decided. And I think even if you kind of, live by this whole cyclical living type thing, like we're in the winter and winter is the time that you should be like hibernating, reflecting,
Mhm.
not really pushing ahead. And then as we move into spring, that's when you can really and you'll probably feel more energy to do it as well. It's like that's when you really should be looking forward and start, sowing the seeds for new growth or whatever, if you want to look at it in the farming terms. So actually, I think a lot of people put a pressure on themselves to plan all these new year goals. But I think actually the first quarter of the year, you could spend your whole quarter planning and reflecting, ready to kind of start doing it in this sort of spring, summertime. Um, and also it's not like we're on this sort of clock, like every year we have to clock in against our achievements. It's like just do it when it feels right. And some days it will feel like, right, I'm ready to sit down now and do this. And other days you're just like, I just don't want to think about that, to be honest. I just want to snuggle up and do nothing. So, mm.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Like doing it when it works for you. And like
Mm.
really, all of our work years look so different. So for some people, this can be a really busy time. For some people, this
Yeah.
can be quiet time. So it's really about carving out what fits in with your lifestyle and when planning works for you, when you want to reflect. So I think that really try to figure out when that is for you
Yeah.
is key.
Yeah.
And I think even in the Southern Hemisphere, even though we are in summer here,
Yeah.
it's actually a really kind of weird time compared to the Northern Hemisphere experience because we have going into Christmas, it's summer, it's the end of the year, obviously. Is our long school holiday
Yeah. That's
period.
crazy.
So it's actually a very busy time, sort of
Mm.
socially, compared to other times in the year. And it's actually a bit of a downtime in terms of the
Yeah.
business sense. So I think equally it's maybe not the best time to plan, even though seasonally it may seem that way. It tends to be a time where either, in December it's just extremely busy as people are wrapping everything up. And then you've got all the end of year stuff happening in terms of like our big summer break. And then the start of the year, a lot of people, you still have school holidays. Business kind of context is a little bit different. So I think it really is just about finding the
Mm.
time that works for you.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be like January to December or whatever. Like if you even look at business financial years, it's like April to April most of the time. But I think you're right. It's more just finding what works for you to feel. So you feel like you're moving forward, because I do think that's a really important thing to feel as a human being, that you're pushing towards, whatever you're trying to do, but in a way that's helpful, not in a way that you're so kind of feeling pressured by the societal need to share our reflections and our, goals for the year ahead. It's just like, just do what feels natural for you. And
Mhm.
and then it will kind of fall into place with the natural, like you say, the natural way your kind of life works in terms of reflecting on them again the next year and setting them again. So I just think
Mm.
think people love a trend. People love jumping on a bandwagon, but really we need to just take a minute and step back and think what's right for me. And because also the other thing I love, which I kind of read about this year, is some people have fallow years where it is a case of just like not doing anything and just, you might be going through something quite traumatic or big, but it doesn't even need to be that. It could just be that you had a massive year, or you're just knackered, or you're a new mum, or you're whatever. You just don't need to achieve something that year. So you can have a fallow year where
Uh-huh.
you're almost letting yourself rest, recuperate, think, and then, next year you're ready to maybe think about what the next steps are. Like, you obviously don't need to be achieving massive things every year of your life. So I like that concept as well. It all kind of comes back to farming terms, doesn't it? But yeah, like a fallow year.
I've never heard that term. I love it though.
It's good though, right? It makes you think,
It's
yeah.
yeah. It's very healthy because you're right. Like a lot of people are experiencing whether it's burnout or whether it's just that they know it's going to be a year that they need space and time. Maybe it's a big
Yeah.
life transition year. Maybe they're moving somewhere, they're having a baby, they're heading into retirement, whatever it may be, that we need to carve space for those
Yeah.
transitions as well. And so allowing ourselves that time and space to be like, actually, I don't need to achieve anything. Or maybe you're just happy with where
Yeah,
you're
I
at,
know. God forbid
Like,
we actually
I
think I
know,
don't need
oh
to move
my
forward.
gosh.
Can you imagine?
Actually don't need to achieve anything. I don't need to change anything. Life is just good. And I think that's
Yeah.
something I was reflecting on earlier when you were talking about those areas is that, we don't need to change anything if it's working. If
Yeah.
it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So I think we can get really caught constantly trying to achieve, constantly trying to do better, but we don't need to if it's working, if we feel good about it, if we're happy, if that's in alignment with our idea of what
Mm.
success looks like, then we're good, and we
And
don't
I
have
think
to
that,
always be achieving goals.
yeah, and for me, that is kind of one of the points of it. I think, like, I want to get to a point where I feel happy in every area of of my life, and it's all sort of running quite naturally. And I think it's not necessarily about achieving a certain figure or getting a six pack, or I mean, I'd love a six pack, but like, it's not necessarily these key milestones. It's actually getting to a point where life is running and I've got all the habits I want in place and I'm moving towards the target quite automatically, if that makes sense. So I've kind of got the
Mhm.
areas ticked off, but not always necessarily about achieving a really big goal, or it's just, yeah, it's just kind of the wheel is spinning and I'm happy in all areas of it, really. So I think that's
Yeah.
a nice way to do it. Rather, I mean, obviously it's good to have big push goals as well, stretch goals, but um, I think for me in the areas I'm focused on at the moment, it's more about getting a habit, a discipline, a consistency in place, and then perhaps looking at like, right, what can we strive to achieve now?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, but yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
really interesting, and I'd love hearing other people's goals. Like, I'd actually love people to jump on Instagram or something and just share what their kind of maybe their key reflection and their key goal is, because I just think it's so interesting. Because we all think we're aiming for the same stuff, but actually most people we're all in going completely different directions. I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And Katie, you'll have to share yours once you've done them.
Yes, I think, I tend to focus, as you know, more on kind of like the feelings and the lifestyle I want and how I want life to feel for that year. Or sometimes I've chosen a word in the
Yes, I was
past.
gonna say, have you chosen a word?
No, not yet. So I had connection last year, which I think, yeah, it on reflection was definitely the right word for me. Um,
Yeah.
and the year before was ease, which was the move to Bali.
Oh, I
So it
love
was kind of,
that.
easing, just creating a life with ease. So it was a big lifestyle change in 2023, and 2024 was really about connection and reconnecting and making new friendships.
Yeah, I love that.
And yeah, really, and just connecting with the people that I love, really. So having that time and space with the kids and
Yeah.
my partner and those sort of things and friends. But yeah, I'm not sure. It does take me a little while to kind of stew on, which I like this period of where you're kind of being
Mm,
a bit social, you're having a bit more time, just to sort of think about what that is for 2025.
yeah. I can't remember what my word was. I did come up with one.
Did you? What's your word?
It was either consistency or
Ooh.
can't remember. There are quite a lot of shifts going on in life at the moment, and I feel like it was something like empowerment or power. I can't remember. once I find it, I will share. But consistency definitely needs to be a word for me as well in some areas
I
of
think
life.
that's what I want to do this year. I don't know if it's my word, but definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I think the organization, the consistency is
Mm.
probably more organization, I think, for me this
Yeah.
year. Uh, there's
Amazing.
a lot of organizing to do. But, one of the other things that you touched on is what you call the wheel of life. And we have a similar kind of thing that we think about in psychology terms, in terms of those different key areas of our life. But I don't know if this is the case, but when you were saying it, what I was thinking when you sort of went through the different areas is that you've created some of those areas that maybe are important to you. Because I've
Mm.
never heard, for example, so you mentioned adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when, in therapy, when we're talking about goal setting or what we want to achieve, etc., a lot of it comes back to people's values and what it is that they value in their life. So I'm wondering, did you create your kind of wheel of life? Like, is that around like the key areas that are important to you, or is there some sort of structure that it has
Yeah.
nominated this?
There was kind of, I think there's like suggested words you can use, and there's definitely like a universal wheel of life. But I think I kind of do it exactly like that, a bit more freehand, because there's so many that you could choose from and you kind of can pick what's important to you. And I felt like there's like personal development, a business, finances, friends, family, and they're all quite separate, but you can kind of lump them together. So like for me, family and adventure kind of go together at the moment because I want to take my children on incredible experiences. Money and business go together because obviously I run my own company. And it's kind of like you can look at different ways to put them together if that work for you. But there is definitely a kind of cheat sheet you can probably find online as well if you want some guidance around the different areas.
Well, I think
Yeah.
there's so many different, right? Depending on which lens you're coming from. If you're coming from more of a business lens,
Yeah.
or like, as obviously wellness, we think of different key areas. But I really like the idea of creating your own. Like, it just
Yeah,
made
I
me
do.
think about that when you were talking, because
Mm.
I think that's what it's about. It's not about saying, this is what society or this is what this framework has decided is important. Those frameworks are really just developed to highlight the different areas, but it is about kind of figuring out, what do I value and what are the key areas of life that I want to focus on
Yeah.
to live the
Yeah.
lifestyle or achieve the life that I want.
And yeah, you can then look back and reflect on which, like all the areas that you've kind of, that were important last year. And then hopefully they've grown for you in importance, or like they've grown in how successful you've deemed them for yourself. And then obviously you can choose those again or look at different areas that you want to look at. And I think it is, like you say, it's a really nice way of just choosing how you want to live your life and how you want to focus rather than people always suggesting ways for you to do it, basically. But yeah, I think setting goals is a really important part of, moving forward and making yourself feel like you've got a purpose and achieving, but actually doing it at a time that feels right for you. And when it kind of makes sense for you rather than forcing yourself into this January the 1st setting goals. So if you haven't done it yet, don't worry, there's still plenty of time to do it, basically. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
You're ready to create a life on your terms. Join us every week and make sure to like and subscribe to keep up to date with new episodes. All the links to keep in touch with us are in the bio.